name's Mary Linda Garcia, and I was an elected official, a state rep in southern New Hampshire for 4 terms, and then last year I was the GOP nominee in the 2nd district. So all to say, I've been in Lebanon and up in this area. Thanks. Thank you, so kind. I've been up here a lot, and I recognize so many friendly faces, and I just want to say thank you to all of you for the support you gave me last year. I have to apologize that I didn't win, because that means that you and I both still have Representative Custer as our congresswoman, which is unfortunate. But in any case, it really meant a lot to me, all of your support, and I appreciate you coming out to hear another fantastic candidate, Carly Fiorina, this evening. So I wanted to talk to you just briefly before she comes out. And just, it's so interesting because I've been involved in campaigns for a while. And when I would hear from so many citizens in the state that would say to me, you know, I just wish we could have a candidate that was the total package. You know, I want someone who knows the economy, that's good on foreign policy, that's a great communicator, that can, you know, handle these difficult questions about, you know, women's health issues, one that we can trust, one that's consistent, one that can push back on the media and, you know, those gotcha questions that they love to throw at people, one that's relatable to the American people, one that can beat someone like a Hillary Clinton, someone that is consistent over time, someone that understands the issues that are important to America, and someone that isn't jaded in terms of having been in office and that usual politician that we all are so tired of. And so here we are today, and what do you know? We have that candidate, and she's going to be talking to us in a little while, and I just want to go through that list again. One of the things that's challenging when you don't have that much name recognition is people say, well, you know, I've heard you now in a few debates, and you do a fantastic job, but what are your policy positions? Are you good on the economy? As you all know, Carly Fiorina was the first female CEO of a Fortune 20 company. That's amazing. She understands the economy, the global economy, the domestic economy. Foreign policy. She has met more world leaders and knows them, has a relationship with them than any other of the candidates running today. When it comes to consistency over time, she ran for the Senate in California and is now running for president in the United States. And you know what? She stuck by her principles then, and she's still sticking to them today. When it comes to communication, have you heard her being interviewed by Chris Matthews, The View, Katie Couric, all of these ones? Not only does she answer their questions with incredible eloquence and articulation, but she actually pushes back and moves them to a stuttering silence a lot of times. It's amazing. When it comes to relatability, right? This is a woman who survived breast cancer. She understands the intricacies of the healthcare system, the challenges that we all face with it, and the destruction that Obamacare has wreaked on our healthcare system. When it comes to the opioid epidemic and substance abuse, we all know what's happening in New Hampshire right now and what a huge challenge that is. She lost a daughter to substance abuse. She understands the challenges in that, and she can really speak to them and relate to people in that respect. When it comes to, you know, understanding the principles that made this country great, she often says, you know, work gives people's lives dignity. Family gives it purpose, and faith gives it meaning. She grew up a normal American girl. She worked really hard. She got to where she was, and now she is someone that can actually take the values that we hold dear and articulate them for us and to others. When it comes to being principled and being able to make tough choices, we all know that she gets a lot of flack for having streamlined product divisions and laid people off at HP. Well, you know what? Her job was to right the ship over there. And we all run around and say we want candidates that support small government. Well, when you have a big government and you want a small government, the only way that happens is by electing leaders that are willing to make those tough choices when the rubber hits the road. We know, because she's proven that she has the backbone to do that. So again, if we're waiting for this dream candidate, she's the one. So that's really fantastic, right? So I just want to make 2 brief points. We all know that the likely Democratic nominee is Hillary Clinton. And I hear time and time again people saying, well, gosh, I think Carly's great. She's in my top 2. I think she'd be fantastic. And I sure would love to see her debate Hillary. Well, there's only one way that's going to happen, and that's if she is the Republican presidential nominee. Now, again, she doesn't have that much name recognition, and polls are kind of crazy these days. So I just want to make a little analogy. When I was running for the congressional nomination last year, I had a lot of people during the primary, which was another crazy primary. There were a lot of people running. People said, you know what, you're fantastic, so I'll keep an eye on you. And I would say, you know what, if you really think I'm fantastic, what I need is for you to support me. Because it's not enough to go with the candidate that has momentum. You have to actually create the momentum for the candidate you believe in. So I'm asking you all tonight, if you're here supporting or you're here shopping, and if you hear what she has to say, and you know that she believes what she's saying and she can accomplish what she says she can do, and you really think she would be a great leader, then I'm asking you to stop shopping and just be with Carly. Join the team. She'll never make you cringe, which is amazing. And you'll always be proud to have supported her. So I just want to thank you all for being here tonight. I endorsed her a number of months back because I knew that she's the kind of candidate I'd always be proud to support. And so I'm trying to do my little part, and I hope you will all join me in doing that as well. So thank you all so much, and I hope you enjoy the evening. And I don't know how to turn this off, so I'm just going to put it here. There we go.
Good evening, everybody. Are you ready for a good town hall? Yes. How many Republicans do we have out there? Let's hear it. All right. So I have a bunch of notes here, and I want to make sure we cover everything we need to cover. First of all, I want to welcome everybody. This is an event that's hosted by the Upper Valley Republican Committee. We're sort of a new group that's reorganized in the spring, and we're always looking for help. So if you have time, go on our website, and if you're interested, pitch in, come to our meetings. So first of all, I want to start off with Pledge of Allegiance, and we have the benefit of having 11 high school students helping us tonight. And Katie Shippa, 11 high school AP student, is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
You're already standing, so I'm not going to ask you to please stand, but okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's have a round of applause for a great job. And now we're also fortunate to have more participation by Lebanon High School. The Lebanon High School Superlatives choral group is going to lead us in the national anthem. And I won't sing. getting ready to start the show here. I just wanted to mention this school has a history. You can see the memorabilia in the back of the room if you have time. Very interesting. This school was first built in 1854, and it was the Tilden Female Seminary. It became the West Lebanon High School, and that closed in 1961, became a grammar school. Nonetheless, that high school continues to have reunions, and our recent reunion had 100 people show up. So the building is 158 years old, still operating and serving a purpose, and 3 of my kids went to school here. But we won't hold that against it. So I thought that was of interest. Now let's get to the program. I hardly need notes, but I'll use them anyway. It's a distinct pleasure to have the opportunity to introduce our special guest tonight, a top candidate for the Republican Party nomination to be president. And we all know the Republicans are going to win. Is that right? Her story is inspiring, rising from secretary to be a CEO in a Fortune 500 company, and then becoming a strong contender now for the GOP presidential nomination. She has focused on how she as president could and will shake up the establishment in Washington, D.C. Without further delay, let me introduce and welcome Carly Fiorina.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much for that warm Lebanon welcome. And Mike Long, I'm so appreciative of your gracious introduction and your support. Marilinda, where are you? Marilinda as well, and Jeannie Forrester, who's doing the people's work tonight. But Mike and Jeannie and Marilinda are some of the early supporters of this campaign, and we have supporters, elected officials, and citizens all across the state, and I am deeply grateful. Thank you so much. I am particularly grateful, I have to say, to the people of New Hampshire, because when I announced my candidacy for the presidency on May 4th of this year, I was 17 out of 16. I say it that way because I was so little known that the pollsters didn't even ask my name. And you will remember that the first debate happened in August of this year. I wasn't on the stage. I had to fight my way onto the stage in September, and many of you helped me. And now I'm right on that main debate stage, and that's right where I'm going to stay. And that is in no small measure due to the people of New Hampshire. Because actually, the people here, you take your responsibilities very seriously. As the first in the nation primary, you didn't care what the polls said or the pundits said or how much money people had. What you did is what you always do. You listen, and you pay attention, and you get to know somebody. And my candidacy has prospered as a result, so thank you. It's okay, you can applaud. And for those of you who may not yet quite have made up your mind whether you're going to support me or not, I know the truth is, in your heart of hearts, you cannot wait to see me debate Hillary Clinton. And that's because you know what's going to happen. I'm going to win. And it's actually important to win so that we can take our country back. And that's what I want to talk about tonight for a few minutes. My blueprint, the things that I want you to hold me accountable for early on in my first term to take our country back. But before I do that, I want to just remind us of who we are. Because I think it's important to remember who we are to have the courage and the wisdom to do what must be done. I have traveled and lived and worked, done charity, done business, done policy work all over the world for decades. And I am keenly aware that it is only in this nation that a young woman can start out the way I did. I typed, I filed, I answered the phones for a 9-person real estate firm. I had no idea what my future held. That was in the middle of a deep recession. My resume at that point read, medieval history and philosophy major, law school dropout. Not a great beginning. And yet, from those beginnings, in a tough economic time, I went on to have the opportunity to lead what we turned into the largest technology company in the world, and now I am running for the presidency of the United States, and that is only possible in this nation. And it's possible here because we were founded on an amazing idea, a visionary idea, a radical idea even. You know, when I was a little girl, my mother told me in Sunday school one morning, she looked at me and the rest of her class and she said, what you are is God's gift to you. What you make of yourself is your gift to God. And I have learned over and over and over in my life that everyone indeed, regardless of their circumstances, is gifted by God, that we all have potential and possibilities, actually far more than we realize usually. And our founders knew that as well. And so they founded this nation on the idea that here we judged an individual as an individual, not as a member of a group or a class. We judged people by the content of their character. And our nation was founded on the idea that here you had a right to find and use your God-given gifts, a right to fulfill your potential. Our founders used slightly different words than I am using. They used the words a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But what they meant was the right to find and use your God-given gifts to find your way to fulfill your potential. Now, we are not a perfect nation. And so we have had to work hard as a nation to make sure that that right applies to everyone. But despite our imperfections, it is still true that more things have been more possible for more people from more places here than anywhere else on earth. And our founders then said, and this was actually the radical part of the idea in a way, our founders said that that right comes from God and cannot be taken away by man or government. I am running for the presidency of the United States because I think we have reached a pivotal point. I think we have reached a pivotal point where we are no longer a citizen government, which is what we were intended to be. I think instead we have become a nation of a vast, sprawling government that no longer serves the people who pay for it, and a political class that hasn't actually been able to do anything about it for 50 years. And if you think that that's a harsh statement, consider this. 75% of the American people now think we have a federal government that is corrupt. And we now know each day, day after day in the news, not only is our government corrupt in the sense that it picks winners and losers. Did you hear about the 2 VA officials who embezzled taxpayer funds and not only kept a job but kept the money? That's corrupt, ladies and gentlemen. That's corrupt. But we also know that our government is inept. It is ineptitude when we somehow miss the background checks of a fiancé of a terrorist. We now know the 2 terrorists in San Bernardino have been radicalized for years. We know that the woman on her K-1, her fiancé visa, she put in a phony address. Somehow we missed all that. That's what happens when bureaucracies get out of control. They become inept and corrupt. 75% of the American people have figured that out. 80% of the American people now believe we have a professional political class of both parties that cares more about its own power, position, privilege, and ambition, running and winning, running and winning, running and winning, than actually getting anything done and solving festering problems. And the truth is, think about the festering problem you care about. What is it? Is it securing the border? Is it reducing the size of government? Is it having programs that actually work to lift people out of poverty instead of just tangling their lives up in webs of dependence that last for generations? Whatever your cause is, it isn't getting fixed, is it? And if you're a Republican, a conservative like me, you can look back at election after election after election And we talk about the same things, but it doesn't change. We have a bloated, vast, corrupt, inept federal government bureaucracy, a professional political class that hasn't been able to do anything about it despite all their best talk, and you always hear their best talk at an election cycle. And the reality is that government and that political class is crushing the potential and the possibilities of this nation. I am running for the presidency of the United States because we have reached a pivotal point, and I believe, citizens, it is time to take our country back. You know, people sometimes ask me, what's the difference between business and politics? There are a lot of differences. Politics, let's just start. Politics is kind of a fact-free zone sometimes. Really. People just talk. It's not tethered to the facts. It's not even tethered to what's doable. People just talk on both sides. People just talk. But here's another difference. We don't seem to hold government or politicians to account very often, do we? I come from the same world you do. In the world we live in, actions speak louder than words, don't they? In the world we come from, if you say something, you kind of got to go do it. But that isn't how politics and government seem to work, not at least for quite a while. When I was a chief executive, I had to report results every 90 days. In excruciating detail. And then I had to answer questions in public about all those results. And then I had to project forward our results for the next 90 days and answer questions about those projections in excruciating detail in public. And if I misrepresented our results or our projections, I was held criminally liable. Now imagine if we held politicians to this standard. I am rolling out a blueprint to take our country back because I want you to hold me accountable. I am standing here and saying to you that the 6 things I have on this blueprint, it's not all we must do, but these are the most important and first things we must do to take our country back. They must get accomplished early on in my first term, and I want you to hold me accountable. And I also want your help to get them done. So let me go through some of these. And let me start at the bottom, actually, because ISIS and terrorism and the threat to the homeland are on our minds. We must defeat ISIS, and we must lead again in the world. So let me tell you what that takes. I know more world leaders than anyone running, with the possible exception of Hillary Clinton. I have been in and around the world for 3 decades. I have chaired the advisory board at the Central Intelligence Agency, advised the NSA, the CIA, 2 secretaries of defense, a secretary of state, a secretary of homeland security. I have held the highest clearances available to a civilian. I know most of our allies and quite a few of our adversaries. And so I know our military intelligence capability, and I also know that when we do not stand with our allies and confront our adversaries, that the world is a very dangerous place. We are losing this war against ISIS not because we cannot win, but because our president will not lead. And we also have candidates on the Republican side who don't have a plan to win either. Donald Trump comes to mind, so he distracts us with outrageous proposals, while meanwhile he has no plan to win. See, this is what politicians do. He may say he's not a politician, but he's acting a lot like one. This is what politicians do. They distract. President Obama doesn't have a plan to defeat ISIS, so he talks about gun control and climate change. Donald Trump doesn't have a plan to defeat ISIS, so he talks about banning Muslims. Here is my plan. There are things we must do at home, and there are things we must do in the Middle East. Let's start with what we must do in the Middle East, because ultimately we must deny ISIS their territory. If we cannot do that, we cannot win, because the territory they have conquered, vast swaths of territory in Iraq and Syria, which they conquered because Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama declared victory in Iraq in 2011, withdrew all of our troops against every piece of advice from every military expert. They withdrew for political expediency, ladies and gentlemen, not because it was smart. And they left behind vast swaths of territory and lots of weaponry besides. And that territory, which ISIS now rules with unspeakable brutality, that territory is what they call their caliphate. And we must cut off their supply lines and deny them that territory. So how do we do that? Well, let us start by helping those who have been trying to help us. Yes, we must have far more effective bombing campaigns. Isn't it interesting that suddenly in the address that the president gave from the Oval Office on Sunday night, he started talking about more effective bombing campaigns? Why haven't we been doing that for the last year? Because he has had such constrained rules of engagement that we cannot have an effective bombing campaign. Yes, we need a more effective bombing campaign. Yes, we need more special operations and training forces on the ground. But most importantly, we must have a force of Sunni Arab nations who will defeat ISIS, because it must be Sunni Arabs that defeat this force. The Jordanians, the Kuwaitis, the Egyptians, the Saudis, the Bahrainis, the Emiratis, the Kurds, most of them I know. They have all been asking us for years to do very specific things. The Jordanians want bombs and materiel for their air force. The Saudis want support. The Egyptians want us to share intelligence more directly. The Kurds have been asking us to arm them for 3 years. We haven't done any of it. I will do all of it. Our allies will fight. They are actually fighting right now. But they will not be able to win unless they see leadership, support, and resolve from the United States of America, and I will provide it. It is all... It is also true that our Arab allies don't trust us right now. And they don't trust us right now because we don't stand with allies and we do not confront adversaries. So in addition to doing what is necessary to wage a war against ISIS and win, and by the way, I use the term war because that's the term they use for us. They have told us they are waging a war against us, so therefore we must wage a war against them. But our allies don't trust us right now because we don't stand with them and we don't confront our adversaries. So in addition to everything I just talked about, on day one in the Oval Office, I will also make 2 phone calls, 2 vitally important phone calls. Number 1 will be to my good friend Bibi Netanyahu, a man I have known a long time, to reassure him we will stand with the state of Israel. And that phone call is important because even our allies who disagree with Israel, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, they disagree with Israel, but they watch how we treat Israel and they conclude our friendship doesn't mean very much. And the second phone call is going to be to the supreme leader of Iran. I don't know him, and he probably won't take my phone call realistically, but he is going to get my message. And the message is this: New Deal. New deal with a new president. Until you open every military and nuclear facility to real anytime, anywhere inspections by our people, not yours, we, the United States of America, will make it as difficult as possible for you to move money. We can do that. We don't need anyone's permission or collaboration to do it, and we must do it. We must cut off the money flow. Hundreds of billions of dollars that is being used by Iran to fuel terrorism, to fuel military and nuclear capability, which is most definitely not peaceful. And the reason that phone call is important in connection with defeating ISIS is because every ally we have, they're worried about ISIS, but next in line is Iran. And they see us coddling to Iran and not helping them, and they don't know where we stand. And with those 2 phone calls, every ally we have and every adversary we have around the world will know this: the United States of America is back in the leadership business. And here at home, what do we need to do? We need to make sure that our investigators have access to every piece of information necessary to track these people down. It turns out we missed a whole bunch of clues. We find that out every single time, which is why ultimately government must be competent again. I will go and ask the great technology companies of this nation to help us. Why is that so important? Listen to what the politicians are arguing about right now. We're having arguments about the Patriot Act. Is it good? Is it bad? Ask yourself, When was the Patriot Act written? 2001. We are now 14 years later. Do you know what that means in technology terms? 4 generations of technology. The students in this audience know this. Here we are arguing about something 14 years old. Meanwhile, the terrorists have moved on. The terrorists are taking advantage of every piece of innovation out there. And so we, the most sophisticated technological nation in the world, we have the capability to defeat them, but the government has to go and ask the private sector for help. Whether it's Palantir or Google or Facebook, tremendous companies that have tremendous innovation. Bureaucracies do not innovate. Technology companies do. Now, if you think that seems unrealistic, let me tell you a little story. When I was the CEO of Hewlett-Packard, we lost a lot of people in 9/11, and very shortly after 9/11, I got a call from the head of the NSA, and he needed help. He needed help immediately with some equipment. And so I made a phone call and I diverted truckloads of equipment from a retail customer to NSA headquarters in Maryland. Why do I tell you that story? Because technology companies will help, but they have to be asked. So I'm going to ask them. We can defeat this enemy, but it will take leadership. It will take a leader who understands the world, who is in it, what our capabilities are. And it will also take a leader who understands our capabilities in technology, in our military community, and in our intelligence community. We have to secure our borders. How long have we been talking about securing our borders? 25 years? 25 years. We have been talking about securing our borders, fixing the legal immigration system. We haven't done any of it. Because you see, politicians major in talk. Entertainers might major in talk as well. A leader understands talk is just the first step. Then you got to produce. You got to deliver results. So, what does it take to secure a border? It's actually not rocket science. We know what it takes. Money, manpower, technology. Mostly it takes leadership and political willpower. We have to fix our legal immigration system. And we have to come at this problem from the point of view of what is it that serves our interests. So I believe we have to build and enforce a pro-American immigration strategy. That does not mean that we do not welcome immigrants who want to become Americans. What it means is we have to be thoughtful about the kinds of skills, the kinds of people that we need in this country. And how many? Third, I'm going to move a little bit more quickly so that we can have time for questions. Third, you know, underneath all the anger and the frustration of the American people, and there is a lot, there is also disquiet. Disquiet that somehow we are losing the character of this nation. That we are losing the sense of limitless possibility that has always defined this nation, but that we are also losing the character and the values that have built this nation. And so we need to restore the character of this nation, and we must stand for religious liberty because that is what this nation has always stood for, and we must stand for life as well. Now, life can be a very controversial subject. There are people who disagree on pro-life or pro-choice. I'm pro-life, but you know what? Here as well, the American people have found common ground. The majority of young people, the majority of women, the majority of Americans now think it's wrong that abortions happen after 5 months for any reason at all, and they most definitely think it's wrong that Planned Parenthood is selling fetal tissue or baby parts. So let's take that common ground and quit funding a political operation like Planned Parenthood and pass the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act once and for all. What happens when you have big, complicated government? What happens? It gets big, it gets complicated, whether it's Dodd-Frank, Obamacare, the thicket of regulations that has grown up over 50 years. What happens? When government is big and powerful and complicated, only the big, the powerful, the wealthy, and the well-connected can handle it. The only way something is fair is for it to be simple. You know why I'm so convinced of that? Because I remember being the CEO of an almost $90 billion company, and when I encountered government complexity, guess what I did? I hired accountants, lawyers, lobbyists to make sure all that complexity didn't harm us. But the 9-person real estate firm, they can't do that. Complexity favors the big, the powerful, the wealthy, the well-connected. Bernie Sanders talks a lot about crony capitalism. I agree with him. It is alive, it is well, it is crushing the vitality of our economy. It's been going on for 50 years, but he's dead wrong about how to fix it. The answer to crony capitalism is not more big government, because big government favors the big. The answer to crony capitalism is less government. And that is why we must repeal Obamacare, because it is the classic example of crony capitalism. The drug companies helped write it, the health insurance companies helped write it, and what do you see happening right before your very eyes because of Obamacare? Your health insurance premiums are going up. We're putting more and more people into Medicaid. Fewer doctors are accepting it. Emergency room visits are up. And oh, by the way, who's consolidating? The health insurance companies, the hospitals, the drug companies. See, companies bulk up to deal with big government. I am a cancer survivor. I am now a pre-existing condition. So I know we cannot leave people with pre-existing conditions behind. 2 weeks after I finished a long and grueling battle with cancer, my husband of 30 years, Frank, and I buried our younger daughter to the demons of addiction. So I know that there are places in healthcare where we need to invest more, like mental health or drug addiction prevention and treatment. But Obamacare isn't working, so we need to repeal it because it's just going to get bigger and more complicated. And in its place, we need to do 3 things. We need to give back to states the responsibility to manage high-risk pools, such as New Hampshire once did, because when you move money and decision-making closer to the people affected by it, you get better decisions. Number 2, we need to try the one thing we've never tried in health insurance. What have we never tried? Free market. I was talking to some of the students here at the high school earlier, and I said, think about how technology works in your life. You take up your phone, and you've come to expect that every single year, year after year, you're going to get cooler stuff, better products, lower prices. Why is that? Because technology operates in a free market, that's why. And we need to have some of that discipline and choice so that people are actually served. And finally, the federal government should do one really important thing. It should mandate that every single consumer of health care has information which gives you power. The federal government should mandate that every health care provider publish on a regular basis their costs, their prices, and their outcomes. We need to change fundamentally to cut this government down to size and hold it accountable. We need to change fundamentally how the government takes your money and how the government spends your money. So 2 things I'm going to do early on. Number 1, we have to take a 73,000-page tax code and put it down to about 3 pages. 3 pages. Politicians will say it can't be done. Well, there is a 20-year-old plan for a 3-page tax code, just lying around. You know why 3 is important? Because it's simple. And you know why simple is important? Because it levels the playing field between big, powerful, and small and powerless. We got to get it down to about 3. And when we do that, think about how few IRS agents we need. And that's actually quite important. Because today, in these dangerous and pivotal times, we now have more people working for the IRS than work for the CIA and the FBI combined. Does that strike you as a problem? That's a big problem. Think about that. More people at the IRS than the CIA and the FBI combined. Which is why we have to be able to reallocate money and resources in the federal government. Have you ever asked yourself the question, why is it the government spends more money each and every year? And we have been spending more money each and every year for 50 years under Republicans and Democrats alike, and yet, despite spending more money, we never have enough money to do the important things. Have you ever noticed that? We need to invest in our military, need more money. We need to secure our border, need more money. We need to care for our veterans, need more money. We need to answer your questions on tax day, need more money. You see, the reason that goes on is because all the money's spoken for. So we need to change how the government spends and budgets your money. We got to go to something called zero-based budgeting. It's a fancy word. You know what it means? You know what it means? It's how you budget at home. It's how every business budgets. It's how the school budgets. It means you have to examine and justify every dollar. You can cut any dollar, and you can move any dollar. And the only way we're going to be able to spend less overall and yet invest in our important priorities is to be able to know where every dollar is being spent, force every government employee to justify every dollar, and if you can't, guess what? It gets cut or it gets moved. It's called zero-based budgeting. Would it surprise you to know that there has been a bill for zero-based budgeting sitting on the House floor? Why is it that common sense things that we know would work never get voted on? Term limits, good idea. Zero-based budgeting, good idea. 3-page tax code, good idea. Fixing the legal immigration system, good idea. Why don't those things happen? Because think how many oxes are going to get gored if you go to zero-based budgeting. Think how many cozy little fiefdoms and turfs are going to get disrupted. I will close with this thought. It is fundamentally the difference between management and leadership. You know what managers are? They're not bad people, not at all. But managers are people who accept the system as it is. Managers are people who do the best they can within the system as it is. They don't ever challenge the status quo. Maybe they even take advantage of the status quo, but they don't push against it. And as a result, festering problems never get solved. That is not leadership. Leaders do not accept what is broken just because it's been broken for a really long time. Leaders know their job is to challenge the status quo so that festering problems can finally be solved. One of my great heroes is Margaret Thatcher. And Margaret Thatcher once said this. At a pivotal point in her nation's history, she said, "I am not content to manage the decline of a great nation." Well, ladies and gentlemen, neither am I. Neither are you. But I am prepared, with your support and your prayers and your votes and your citizenship, I am prepared to lead the resurgence of this great nation. Citizens, it is time. It is time to take our country back. Thank you so very much.
Is that exciting or what, folks? I just want to break the mood here for a second because I want to introduce another high school student who's volunteered. Lauren Samard is going to be available with a microphone for those who speak low and have a question. And she volunteered without any prompting. In fact, let all the high school students stand up. These are our future leaders, and these kids are outstanding.
Thank you, Lauren. Nice to meet you. Okay, questions, and Lauren will come to you. Yes, sir, right there, and then we'll come to the lady in front of you.
Hi, I'm Rashad Thomas
Hi.
from West Lebanon. Carly, it's so great to meet you.
Thank you. I like that you're wearing my sign, Rashad. Good for you.
Absolutely. I've been a fan of yours since you ran for Senate in California. I was rooting for you, battling Barbara Boxer in those debates back then. You were fantastic then. You're still fantastic now.
Well, this one we're going to win.
Absolutely. My question is about your immigration plank. Don't you think it would make more sense, and our law enforcement and immigration enforcement folks would have more time and resources to devote to targeting the people who are in our country illegally who are terrorists or criminals and that sort of thing if we would stop, deploying them to deport farm workers and hotel maids and things like that, people who are here peaceful, who just want to be here to work and contribute to our society.
So what you're asking about is really sanctuary cities. Sanctuary cities, by the way, San Francisco's been a sanctuary city since 1989, and we now have 300 of them in this nation. We talk about it every election cycle, but we just let it go on. On this, respectfully, I must disagree, and I will tell you why. When we become a nation that does not enforce the laws we have, then no one cares about the laws we have. We have to enforce the laws we have. And so you cannot permit, in my opinion, you cannot permit cities to just flaunt the law and say, you know what, we don't care what federal law is, we're not going to enforce it. You cannot let that go on. Just as you cannot let it go on that people come here legally on a visa and just overstay. Just as you cannot let it go on that we just ignore the fact that we don't have an employer verification system that works. Government cannot be permitted to be incompetent. Now, here's the part of your question that I do agree with. We need a lot more enforcement personnel. This is why we have to reallocate resources. We cannot settle. Folks, we've been settling for a government that is incompetent and inept, dangerously so. And we've been settling for politicians who talk a good game but never fix it. We cannot settle anymore for an IRS, as one example, that is so vast that we can't afford to hire more FBI and Border Patrol agents to do the job right. It's why I'm laying out this blueprint. So, we have to enforce the laws we have. If we don't like the laws we have, we need to change the laws we have. But we can't simply say, never mind, because when we don't follow the law, we favor some over others. And that is not the character of this nation. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Joellen Courtney, and I'm from Enfield. I'm very pleased
Good
to
evening.
meet you. Hello. You've repeatedly stated that the United States should not take action to fight climate change because we can't solve the problem by ourselves, and I understand that. And now that China has announced a groundbreaking new cap-and-trade system to limit carbon emissions, the details of that will be released in 2017. What do you think the U.S. should do to match China's commitment to fight climate change?
Yeah. So first let me correct the premise of your question. I have not said we should not do nothing. I have said what the president is proposing will accomplish nothing. And let me explain what I mean by that. First of all, whatever you think about climate change, it is delusional to say that climate change is our most pressing near-term national security threat. It is not. I am not saying that's what you said. I'm saying that's what our president has said. Secondly, the scientists who tell us that climate change is real and caused by man also tell us this. With current technology, it will take 30 years, trillions of dollars, and a coordinated, concerted global effort. What do we think the chances are of that happening? Zero. China, with all due respect, China is a great marketer. If you look at the fine print of that agreement, what's been reported, what they're saying is maybe they're going to get around finally to reducing overachieving on the goal that they set in 2025. And the goal they set in 2025 basically says we're not going to get any worse than we currently plan to be. And meanwhile, in the middle of the summit in Paris, they were firing up more coal-fired power plants. In other words, I don't trust China this far. And I think their commitment is a lot of paper, frankly. But here's what we know does work. First of all, what works to solve festering problems? Innovation. That's what it always takes. So I believe we must have the strongest industries in the world if we're ever going to solve this problem. I believe we should be the global energy powerhouse of the 21st century. Why is that important? Because honestly, all the coal that we burn is so much cleaner than the coal that China's burning. I believe we should be the global energy powerhouse of the 21st century, honestly, because the light, sweet crude that we produce in this country is so much cleaner and better than the heavy, sour crude that the Saudis export, or the Russians, or the Venezuelans, or the Iranians. And today, our government prevents our own oil producers from exporting that cleaner burning, light, sweet crude, but we are allowing Iran, Russia, Venezuela, Saudi Arabia to export dirtier burning, heavy sour crude. Does that make sense if you care about the environment? No, it does not. And of course, if we're the global energy powerhouse of the 21st century, what happens? We create jobs. We take away power from the bad guys. Because guess where Russia gets its power? Energy. Guess where Saudi Arabia gets its power? Energy. Guess where Venezuela got a left-wing socialist government? The price of oil. And if we have strong industries, we can innovate. Of course I care about my environment. But it is dishonest for the left wing to say that the rules that they are promulgating are going to help. They will not. It's politics as usual. So I think there are many things we should do, but we need to innovate, and we need to recognize that everything that we do in the energy field is better than anything anyone else is doing around the world. And by the way, if we want to have an honest conversation about climate change, then we better put nuclear technology right back up on the table in the United States of America. Yes, sir. Lauren, you got to come over here. That's why we get somebody young to do this.
Yes, my name's Dennis Merrihew, live in Lebanon. Carly, thanks for being here tonight. My brother and I come to watch you. And
Thank you for being here, and you got my sticker on.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We've been watching you on TV, and we like, a lot what you have to say, so we wanted to come see you in person. My question to you is, all the candidates for years past, they say they're going to do this, they're going to do that. When they get in, it may be a term later, second term, they don't do what they say they're going to do. So how long will it take you to implement, like getting rid of Obamacare and implementing your programs?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. It's a great question. So first, you're right. You're kind of making my point. Politicians talk. That's what they do. They talk. And have you ever noticed that it's only in politics that you can have a job, that you can be elected to do a job, that you can be getting paid to do that job, but you just decide, I don't like that job anymore, I'm going to go off and try for another job. I don't know, that doesn't work for the rest of us in any event. I want you to hold me accountable for this. And I think we can get it done early on in the first term. But let me tell you how you're going to help me get it done. Because I've said this is going to require leadership, but it's also going to require citizenship to take our country back. Let me tell you specifically what I need you to do for me. Talked about technology. Every week, I'm going to go into the Oval Office at the weekly radio address or other addresses, and I will ask my fellow citizens to take out their smartphones. If you have a flip phone, you must upgrade. Yes, there you have your smartphone, okay? Why am I going to ask you to do that? Because I will ask you, for example, do you think we should go to zero-based budgeting? Do you think we should repeal Obamacare? If you agree with me, press 1 for yes. Press 2 for no. You see, ladies and gentlemen, there is an app for citizen government. Technology is the most powerful tool we have ever devised to engage people in the process of their government. I am going to use it because I actually want you to help me put pressure on the status quo, to put pressure on the political class. How do I know that's going to work? Why am I so confident in saying, with citizens' help, we can actually get this done? Because when you put pressure on the political process, it moves. The problem is we all kind of get distracted and move on. Remember the VA scandal in Arizona? Remember how horrified we all were that veterans were dying before they had ever received an appointment? And bureaucrats were cooking the books so nobody would ever find out? And we were so outraged by that as citizens that we put enormous pressure on the political process. And guess what happened? This hopelessly divided Congress signed, passed in 3 weeks, a bipartisan bill saying that the 400 senior executives in the VA could be fired. It sailed through the Senate 99 to nothing, and it got signed by the president, even though it was precedent shattering that you could actually fire somebody in the federal government. Why did that happen? Pressure. Citizens can put pressure. Now, by the way, sadly, we all moved on, and nobody got fired. 3 people. And now we know that 307,000 veterans have died waiting for health care. And we had those 2 VA employees embezzling funds. But the point is, that's why I'm going to ask you every week. We can't let the pressure off. Press 1 for yes, 2 for no. Press 1 for yes, 2 for no. Together we can take our country back, and we can begin the process relatively quickly. And actually we need to, because if we just let this go on, we will come to a place where we cannot take it back. So, upgrade to a smartphone. Shop carefully. And all these young people here are going to help us especially. Thank you for coming. Okay, Lauren, we got to run back here. The lady right in the middle, yes.
Hi, Amy Pitts from Londonderry. I have a daughter who's turning 26 next year. She'll come off her parents' health plan. She'll be on Obamacare. If we didn't have Obamacare, she'd have to pay Anthem about 1/3 of her yearly income. So if you're president, what specifically would she have available to her?
So let's talk about how the health insurance market has operated for 100 years. So first of all, I don't know specifically, but I know this. If there is real competition, she will have more to choose from. Health insurance has been a cozy game between regulators and health insurance companies for 100 years. That's the truth. We used to play it at the state level. The New Hampshire regulators got together with the New Hampshire state insurance companies, and they limited competition. And we did it in 50 states. And all we've done now is nationalize that system, so that now we have the national government in a cozy little game with a handful of health insurance companies. So that means you don't have any choices, actually. By the way, we did this same thing buried in Obamacare. In the pages of Obamacare, we have done this exact same things to the student loan industry. Maybe you don't know this, but buried in the pages of the Obamacare is the national government, the federal government takeover of the student loan business. There is a reason why student loan debt is skyrocketing, because there are no choices anymore. And because the federal government decides how much you're going to pay for your student loan, and they've decided it's somewhere between 4.5% and 6.5%. Even though the government pays interest on its debt at about 1.5% to 2.5%. So think about what I just said. The federal government is making money off the student loan business and has driven everybody else out of the business. Does that sound like a racket to you? It is. And Obamacare is going to be a racket too. So that's why we have to go to the free market. We have to have a situation